You check your phone before you're even fully awake. You assume there will be a tomorrow to check it again. Every plan you make, every birthday you count on seeing, rests on one quiet assumption: that humanity just keeps going. But 74,000 years ago, that assumption nearly broke. Not because of a war, not because of a disease, because of a mountain almost nobody alive today has ever heard of. Your ancestors didn't see it coming. How could they? A volcano doesn't send a warning. On the island now called Sumatra, there was a supervolcano named Toba. Calling it a volcano barely covers it. When Toba erupted, it didn't just spill lava. It threw an estimated 2,800 cubic kilometers of rock, ash, and gas into the sky. That number doesn't mean much on its own. So picture this instead. Enough material to bury an entire small country under meters of ash in a matter of days. The eruption didn't stay local. Ash from Toba has been found in ocean sediment and soil layers as far away as East Africa and India, thousands of kilometers from the crater. Your ancestors, wherever they were standing that year, likely watched the sky change color. Did they know what it meant? Almost certainly not. Here's where it gets dangerous for the story of you. Some scientists believe the eruption triggered what's called a volcanic winter. Ash and sulfur particles spread through the upper atmosphere and blocked sunlight for years, maybe even a decade. Global temperatures may have dropped by several degrees. That might sound small. It isn't. A drop of just a few degrees can collapse plant growth across entire continents. Plants died back. The animals that depended on those plants followed. And the humans who depended on both got squeezed into a narrower and narrower space to survive in. This is the foundation of what researchers call the Toba catastrophe theory. Geneticist Stanley Ambrose proposed in the late 1990s that this eruption may have pushed the entire human species through what's known as a genetic bottleneck. A population crash so severe that most of the genetic variation humans once had simply vanished with the people who carried it. And here's the strange part your biology teacher probably never mentioned. Modern humans have remarkably low genetic diversity for a species our size and age, lower in some measurements than a single troop of chimpanzees living in one forest. Chimpanzees, one forest. Meanwhile, humans span every continent and climate on Earth and still carry less genetic variation between us than that one small group of chimps carries among themselves. That's not a coincidence you'd expect from a species that grew steadily and safely for hundreds of thousands of years. It's the kind of pattern you'd expect from a species that came very close to disappearing. So how close? Some estimates put the surviving global population somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 individuals. Not per continent. Total. On the entire planet. If that number is right, every person you have ever met, every stranger you've ever passed on the street, descends from a founding group smaller than the population of a single small town. Sit with that for a second. Your existence isn't guaranteed by the scale of humanity today. It's guaranteed by a few thousand people who happen to make it through something almost nobody planned for. But here's the twist. Most retellings of this story leave out. And it matters. The Toba catastrophe theory is contested hard. Archaeologist Michael Petraglia and his team excavated a site in India called Jwalapuram, sitting right beneath a thick layer of Toba ash. If Toba really wiped out most humans in the region, you'd expect a gap in the archaeological record right where that ash sits. Instead, they found stone tools above and below the ash layer, made in a strikingly similar style. Life in that specific place doesn't look like it stopped. It looks like it barely paused. That's a real problem for the simplest version of the disaster story. If some populations survived Toba without a catastrophic break, then the eruption wasn't equally deadly everywhere. So which version is true? Maybe neither one, cleanly. The more likely picture is messier and more human. Toba may have devastated populations that were already living close to the edge, in fragile environments with little room for error, while groups in more forgiving regions weathered the ashfall and kept going largely unbothered. The bottleneck in human genetics might be real. Whether Toba alone caused it, or whether it was one hard shove among several, is still being argued over by the scientists who study it. Climate researchers like Alan Robach have modeled how severe a Toba-scale volcanic winter would actually need to be to match the genetic evidence, and the results are still debated too. Some models suggest the climate effects were sharp but short. Others suggest they lingered. The eruption is not in question. How much of humanity's story it actually rewrote still is. Why does any of this matter to you, sitting here now, generations removed from any of it? Because if a bottleneck like this really happened, then every person alive today is a distant cousin. Not in the loose, feel-good sense people use at family reunions, literally, genetically. You and every stranger on every continent likely trace back to a small, exclusive club of survivors who made it through something they never saw coming and never fully understood. It's easy to assume humanity's biggest threats are the ones humans create: wars, pollution, each other. But long before any of that was possible, a mountain on the other side of the world nearly finished the story before it had really begun. Not out of malice, not as punishment, just geology doing what geology does, indifferent to who happened to be standing nearby. You didn't survive, Toba, but someone did. A few thousand someones, scattered and struggling, in landscapes turned gray by ash and cold. And every choice you've made today, every plan for tomorrow, exists because that small, fragile group didn't give up. So the next time you check your phone before you're even fully awake, and assume, without thinking, that there will be a tomorrow to check it again, remember what that assumption is actually built on. Not certainty, not safety, a mountain that almost erased you, and a handful of people who, somehow, made sure it didn't.